All right, let's go to some viewer comments and viewer questions. This comes from Robert Lewis Moore. It says, watching this channel as long as I have, Angelo, it is hard to say it is anything more than a hypnotism project. Isn't that great? What a question. So hypnotism versus awakening, dramatically different. Awakening is, first of all, not a state. Hypnotism or hypnosis is a state. I've seen people hypnotized several times, but it was always in sort of like comedy hypnosis. And it's actually a fascinating thing to watch. And I actually went up and tried to be hypnotized as well in the like original group of people where they try to find who's more hypnotizable. And I really tried, but I couldn't do it. Like it's not, I don't think it's accessible to me. I don't know. Because it's like you can hear the suggestions trying to suggest you into another altered state. But I think if you're not in the basic altered state of mind identification, then it's hard to like believe in another altered state. It's like hard to convince yourself you're in another altered state. That's the best way I can explain it. But it was really fascinating to watch. And some people around me who like, there were girls sitting next to me who, right when the hypnotist started like the conversation of like, you know, I can't remember even what he said, is like, put your hand here and do this and do that. But like within less than a minute, she was literally like leaning on my shoulder. Like her head was just like, she was just falling into me. And it was just really obvious that like, there's something in it there's a major buy-in. You want to be hypnotized, you know? It's a very much a like voluntary state, I think. I think it's been said even by hypnotists that you can't really make people do something that's against their morality under hypnosis or anything like that. And that makes sense to me. People aren't going to do what they really don't want to do. So what I think it is like people do what they do want to do. They're just getting a certain kind of permission. And then someone's kind of suggesting an altered state that they can go into and just offering it and saying, here, try this. And if you're willing and you want to try that, you will, if you have access to altered states of consciousness. I would say that awakening and realization is almost the opposite in the sense that I think the more awake you are, so to speak, the less sort of mind-identified delusional altered states that you experience, the harder it is to get into an altered state. Altered states including this altered state of separation, the altered state of experiencing time. These are all altered states. The altered state of experiencing self, apart from anything or at all, really. These are altered states. And so when, when those fundamental delusions are dispelled, it's really hard to get into altered states in a sense. When I was talking to Kevin Shanelek about the fetters, he pointed out that, and this is just his view on it, but I think it's pretty accurate. And he has experience with this. But when we talk about the jhanas, like which are like these altered states that are produced states of meditation that you can get into during meditation, including formless states, he said what he found is that once the realization was clear, you couldn't get into them anymore. Like the very fact that you can go into a jhana essentially proves that the realization isn't there yet, because you can enter what feels like an altered state from what is already an altered state, if that makes sense. So that's kind of my experience. Like I can meditate and it is deeply relaxing, but it's not an altered state. It's just a different set of conditions. Whereas many, many years ago, through psychedelics or through meditation, there would be definitely an experience of altered states. Like I felt like whatever I was kind of disappeared and got replaced by this altered reality or something. That's not how it's experienced now at all. So yeah, I understand the fear of that, or the worry that like, oh, maybe we're just being hypnotized, or this isn't real, or there's like definitely a doubt built into that thought. And I've heard this before. Other people have said, oh, I think this is hypnosis. And all I can say is from what I understand about hypnosis, what I've read about it, what I've seen, this is not even close to hypnosis. It's not a state. It's something that you can really wake up to, or even more properly wake up from. The altered state of separation, the altered state of being a separate self in a world of other separate selves, moving through a timeline, feeling everything in a subject-object experience. That's a bunch of altered states nested within one another. And you could literally wake up from all of that and experience reality unconditioned by mind. That's what realization's about. So it's certainly not hypnosis. It's not any other altered state. It's I might call it the natural state, or I might call it the unconditioned state. So anyway, great comment. I appreciate that. Let's see what we got here. This one says, I love you. Thank you. Well, I love you too. You're welcome. This one says, first, people like to say they're the first ones to see the video. Someone here said, circumstances don't matter. Your state of being is what matters. I think that's a really good pointer. It's a really good comment. The other thing I'll say, though, is the state of being. It's like, what do you really mean by that, right? Not necessarily talking to the original commenter, but anyone who's orienting this way. What do you mean by state of being? If we talk about being, does it have states? Does it come and go? You know, because we could have 10 people use the term being, and they all kind of mean different things, right? Because these are sort of abstract terms. Doesn't mean some are right and some are wrong. They're just talking about different aspects of reality or aspects of your experience. But when I talk about being with a capital B, what you wake up to with a shift in identity, that first awakening, the experience of being as primary, rather than the sense of becoming or the sense of defending or the sense of being someone, right? It is kind of, it's not kind of, it is the unconditioned state of consciousness, specifically consciousness, but it's the unconditioned experience of consciousness, unconditioned by subject-object, unconditioned by belief, thought, etc. And so it's not a state, and it doesn't have states, but it is what matters. It's certainly in the first big step of this whole unbinding process. So that's a good comment. Okay, so this one is about a video. It's in regards to a video I made called does waking up or wanting to wake up make me a bad parent? Which landed for a lot of people. This person, I think, still has some skepticism. It's from Sister Group. It says, okay, but even if I wake up and I feel all of this intimacy, that doesn't mean my kids will feel this way. True. It's not about anybody else per se. And then the rest is, and the me that hasn't woken up yet is so worried about how they'll navigate this scary world with a mom whose head is in the clouds that I think it's holding me back from actually waking up. I wish I could hear about some of the struggles with awakened parents, particularly mothers, have faced, and now they're successfully dealt with them. Sorry, I may be reading this wrong. So that they don't impede us from waking up. I just want to point out, though, if you read the comments on this video, the person who wrote this, if you read the comments, you'll see there are people who do resonate with this, and they've said very clearly in the comments, they're a better parent after awakening. That's their words, not mine. That you realize after the shift that you're more present, you're more oriented to what that child needs and who they are, and less oriented to your own fears about who they are, who they're going to become, what's going to happen to them. Because fear ultimately is about you, right? Generally speaking, it's like it's your own hesitation, your own tendency to turn back into the mind and look at those fearful thoughts. So just be aware of that there are people who watched this video and affirmed that indeed they found that they were better parents. They're more available, more present with their children, and so forth. So there are many people. I know so many of them. So they're out there, and I think, without exception that I can think of, they would probably all say that. I would be pretty surprised if any didn't. So there you go. That's a pretty good sample size. And it's, I mean, sample size of, I could probably think of 40 or 50 people just offhand that I know, mothers who've gone through awakening as parents, and would say that on the other side, things are clearer. You find yourself more available, more present, and so forth. So the numbers are there. And there are plenty of people who would say that. But I actually don't think that's what's happening. Just reading through this, what seems like it's happening is like, what it feels like, I could be wrong, but it feels like you're trying to actually plan out what it's going to be like before you're there, right? You're trying to say like, well, how would it be? How can I act with my kids? And I can tell you right now, 100 people could tell you that they've woken up and they did fine afterward. And you're still not going to believe it if you're believing those kinds of thoughts, because your mind is tripping over itself. It's the fear of entering the unknown. And in this case, it's about children, or it's about not knowing what's going to happen later and all those sorts of things. But it could be about anything, and it would be about anything. The mind will just use whatever is convenient, whatever you're most you care most about, or you're most interested in the moment, or whatever it is, your mind's going to use that to trip you up and catch you. But I'll just be honest and kind of direct, like you can't actually know. Like you will never know what it's going to look like for you to be a parent after awakening until after awakening. You're not going to know what it looks like for you to be a person after awakening until after awakening. You're not going to know what it's like to emote after awakening until after awakening. Like that's the thing about it, is it's just big question mark. You have to enter the unknown, which the other way of saying that is you have to let go of your own insistence that your thoughts and your belief that your thoughts are the sort of cure for your own ills, realizing that's just not the case, that the thoughts and that world of sort of mental control, it just doesn't work. And we have all recognized that at some point, and that's what the shift ultimately materializes from, is realizing we're not in control in the way we think we are. The feeling of being in control and convincing myself I am, and that I can think everything into existence, and I can control my world through thought, like it's a failed system, and it causes suffering for me. And then it can, of course, cause suffering for those around you. But until that shift, it's very hard to see that fully. You can sense it, but after the shift, it's like, oh gosh, yeah. And it's so freeing, because then all of a sudden it's like, I don't have to imagine how things are going to be. I don't have to live in the world of the thought world of the future, the imagined future, and more importantly, the feared future, because I'm here. I'm right here now. And my children are here right now, and I can see them, I can feel them, and I can see what they need, what they want, what moves them. Things are much simpler, and you're much more in the present, not so worried about the future and possibilities, because you can drive yourself crazy worrying about possibilities with children, right? Of all the things that could go wrong, and there's endless possibilities of things that could go wrong with your children, of course, all kinds of things. And so that's just a mind road that if you're on that road, it sort of justifies itself to be on that road, to keep thinking about it, but it doesn't actually lead you anywhere positive. It doesn't really lead you anywhere into more presence. It doesn't lead you into better parenting. It just leads you into fear, right? It's like fear begets fear until you really face the underlying fear. And I think the underlying fear is entering the unknown. That's my instinct just from reading all of this. Good question though, and it sounds like it comes from an honest place. Okay, this is, hello, I'm new to the channel. This is from Brenda. Hello, Brenda. When do you do lives? I do twice a month. I do some kind of live. So I do a live on YouTube, and then I do a double barrel non-duality. I do them at different times. I don't do them scheduled times. And I announce them in the community tab at the beginning, pretty much at the beginning of every month. The double barrels always have me and another non-dual facilitator or somebody like that, or someone who's really adept at emotion work or something. And you have access to those live if you are a sustaining member or above, which is a $10 a month level. So if people want to, this all started because I said, if you want to donate to the channel, it really helps me with the business, because the business has to pay for editing and it has to pay for all of the things. There's a lot of things that go into this. And so if anyone wants to donate, and I said you can start with $2.50 a month, $5 a month, $10 a month. If you want to pay $25 a month, and that's the patron circle level, then you can see all of my recordings from every retreat I've ever had that I recorded. And there's, 5 a year or something. So there's more and more all the time. So that's the patron circle level. And then there's founders, if you really want to help me out a lot, help the business out a lot, I should say. Of course, some people can't afford any of that, and that's fine too. I have tons of free videos, but the lives are at the $10 level that you can be a part of those live, and then you'll see them recorded later on, whether you were part of them or not. So good question. Thank you. Okay. This is Mr. Derek says, I'm getting hit everywhere I look about the prime importance of thoughts, identification, attachment, etc. I once read, how about using thoughts like tools, looking objectively without the my thought component? Just, can I use this like a spanner? Is it useful? Don't know what a spanner is. Or another teacher's awakening, it's just thoughts. Imagining that there's a thought stream above your head. I don't know about okay, it's not imagining that there's a thought stream above your head, because then that would be, there'd be a visual thought of you imagining something, right? The question is, who's the one imagining that? That's the real key to this, right? It's not imagining thoughts as a thought stream. It's actually seeing the thoughts, noticing thoughts as thoughts. And there's a difference, right? Because you can imagine some visual experience or something of thoughts moving in a head or something. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about seeing the one that's imagining that, the one that's imagining the internal narrative that's talking to you all the time, that's listening right now to what I'm saying and responding to it, making it feel like you're the one thinking. That's the thought stream. That's the key to get behind that. Does that make sense? And there are a lot of ways to do it. I have the playlist called Thoughts. I have the playlist called Mind Identification. Both are very good for this. And I have one called Approaches to Awakening or Awakening Approaches. All of those will be helpful. Okay, someone asked, I can get to the point of quote unquote no thinking, but not sure what I'm supposed to do or see or feel after that. Well, one thing you can do is just stop. Stop right there. But what I would encourage you to do is when you stop and there is no thinking, that notice that the label no thinking is also a thought. And then also the next thought that says, I don't know what to do when I get here, is also a thought. It probably sneaks in pretty quick. Just look at that, see what happens when you disregard even those thoughts and just notice. Yeah. Watch those little the subtle ones that you're already identified with before you know it. Okay, this user QL70G2M whatever says, I can get to the point. Oh, I'm sorry. Same question asked twice. Okay, someone here says, this is Arthur. Arthur Teo. I don't know. Awakening is not that hard, but staying awake is the problem. Want to wake up? Easy. Just focus on the seeming empty space around you. You will feel a stillness and hear ringing in your ears. You are home. Okay. That's not what I call awakening, but I'm not saying it's a bad practice. That's just not what I call awakening. Then the rest of the comment says, but the next moment when you refocus on the matter around you, I don't know if they mean, it's a capital M, so I don't know what they mean by the matter, if they mean like physical matter or they mean like this matter, this what's happening. But anyway, you lose the connection and forget. Matter is enticing and tempting. Empty space is uninteresting and looks unimportant. The moment you return to obligations, relationships, commitment, and work, so I wouldn't call those matter, I would call those thoughts. Yeah, in fact, the idea of matter is also a thought, right? So what's happening is attention's returning to thoughts, yeah. So the moment you return to all that, you lose the connection and forget. Refocus on the empty space, probably not a bad practice, and awaken, but momentarily. Again, that's not an awakening, but you can notice that space for sure. No need for meditation, although some would call this meditation, what you're suggesting. Many would call that meditation. But anyway, you say no need for meditation, books, classes, just look deep at empty space. It's that simple, so simple, it's unbelievable. Yeah, it's not a bad comment. I mean, you're pointing to a practice that's a good practice. There are others. That's not a bad practice at all. It really depends what you mean by empty space and how clearly you perceive it, and whether you can look so deeply into it that the subject-object construct disappears and your sense of identity shifts. But when you kind of said it kind of comes and goes, those are experiential maybe tastes. Those are meditative experiences, but not yet awakening based on what's described here. And then there's some distinctions that, again, it's words, right? So no need for meditation. Well, it depends what you mean by meditation. Eckhart Tolle says you don't need meditation, but he says sitting in presence, which you could call meditation, right? So a lot of times this stuff's confusing just because of the words people use. But anyway, overall, good comment. Then someone here says, does source have an agenda? What is source? You have to ask yourself that. What is source? Where do you see it? Where do you feel it? How do you know it's there? How do you know it's source? What does source imply? Okay. Someone here says choice is an illusion. Okay. This is from Pam. I'm in some deep shadow muck. And for me, there's also a continuous return to childhood stuff I thought I had worked through before awakening. This is common stuff. This is really common in deeper realization, in deeper shadow work. Don't be surprised. A lot of people are turned off by this. Like, oh, no, that's not. Awakening is about, like, you don't have to do that stuff. Not really. In deeper realization, it's going to come. And you may feel very much pre-verbal emotions and experiences that the child felt and that were covered up by identities and so forth, like really sort of primal fears of existential fears and things coming in, maybe a sense of shame around just being a you. Things like that will come up, these childhood senses, and sometimes childhood traumas, they will come up. You don't have to like, obsess about all this stuff. It'll come or it won't, but it usually does. And the more sensitive you get, the more clear you are, the more open you are to all experiences, internal and external, the more you're going to pick this stuff up. And it can move through and it can integrate and it can sort of, dissolve too. But you don't want to bypass it. And so you're in good territory here for sure. Let's see. She says, surprise, I'm back, and more deeply painful than ever. So this is also true that as we go into deep realization, just understand that when you feel, let's call it repressed emotion, let's call it unresolved fear, we'll call it emotional pain. It's going to feel more direct than ever before, for sure. And that you could call that more painful, more intense, more whatever, but I don't recommend calling it anything. I recommend letting all those labels go, all those subtle thoughts like this is too much, it's overwhelming, it's going to kill me, it's going to destroy me. These will be these like very childlike concerns that will be tagged onto that experience. Set those aside and just let the experience take you. And what I think you'll find is you will move through this stuff even in deeper realization. It'll pop up here and there. It'll be more direct, but it tends to move through quicker. Tends to come and go more quickly. Although when you're in it, it won't feel like that. When you're in it, it will feel like eternity because there's no time. Yeah. So it's a very different way of living, but it's okay, of course, par for the course. And even though, there is no time in the relative sense, coming out the other side of this, there's always more clarity. So it's well worth really surrendering to it when it comes. She says, trying to go through it, not around it or under it or backing off away from it. Good. Very humbling stuff. Yeah, exactly. The ego does not enjoy it at all. Nope, ego does not enjoy it. It wants me to be already special and elegant and polished and strong and unimpressed and so on. So what that is, those are those identities I was telling you about, that as we feel these things as children, our older siblings and our parents, and they teach us these ways to bury it instead of fully feel it and I guess understand it more. They teach us to like bury it under other identities, and we just build them one on top of another, right? And at some point you become this, polished, confident, elegant, whatever, but it's an identity. And you can see how they're associated now, right? You can see like, this is where I want to go, but now I can't go there anymore. That's what a realization does for you. It says, nope, you can't go to those fake coping mechanisms anymore. You have to go directly into the experience. Turns out to be a good thing though. Thank you. You're doing great. Thanks for sharing. Someone said, Angelo, can you do another video about shame? Yeah, sure can. Someone said, I struggle with not thinking. When I try to focus on sense experience, my thinking voice won't shut up. Okay, this is why I recommend a few things. One is initial awakening, because without that, it's very difficult to work in the sense fields in a deep and ongoing way. Number two, I recommend even after awakening and all through realization, I recommend people learn to meditate in unbound consciousness. And I talk about this frequently. I have a whole playlist on consciousness. So if you don't know what I mean by that, learn to do that, because when there's thoughts, that's where you go. If your attention's just really being pushed up into the mind space, then learn to reside in that space with equanimity, in a space of being instead of thinking. But you have to know that. You have to know how to do that. There is a sort of technique to that. So I recommend the consciousness playlist. Good questions and comments. Someone says, there is just this, as they say. Yep. Just this. And it's more than enough. And it's not a this, it's not a thing, it's no thing. And it's no way. It's no way things are, it's no way of being. It's free from both of those. Free from form and free from inherent view, or inherent existence, or inherent orientations. Okay. Someone said, just want to mention, I find the stock footage somewhat distracting, even disturbing, and prefer the old psychedelic morphing shapes. Boy, you should have heard how many people hated the old morphing psychedelic shapes. So the thing about, editing and the way I used to do with the green screen, and I'd have the morphing psychedelic stuff, I got a lot of complaints about that. Music, I get a lot of complaints about it, but I also get a lot of people say they love it. So here's the deal when you have 10,000 people watch your videos a day, is I just realized I'm just going to get some people who just don't like certain parts of it. And I just kind of do what artistically makes sense to me, what I enjoy. And I do notice that certain things do get more views. So more people do enjoy them, even if they're not the vocal ones or the ones that comment. But yeah, the music is one of them. It's like some people are like, I can't watch the video with the music. It just makes it impossible to watch the video. Other people are like, it's awesome. I love it. So it's just how it goes. If you're going to, be a creator, put things out there, there are going to be people who are strongly opinionated on both sides. And then there are people who don't really care either way. They just like listening. So I always appreciate your feedback and comments and suggestions, but just understand that I have to take some of them with a grain of salt, because they kind of sometimes balance each other out, or like wash each other out. Because I get both positives and negatives on a lot of things. Then someone here said, I don't even know what they're talking about. Someone said she wasn't enlightened if she died. I don't know what that means. Must have been referring to something I said in the video. Okay, this is a good question. It says, I'd like to know more about what it means when you talk about going deeper. I get this. This is from Justin M. I get the sense that there's something I can experience that's not part of my five senses. Tricky mind. Okay. But whenever I look deeper within the thought area, I seem to just make up stuff in my imagination. So I don't do that. Am I misunderstanding something? So the first shift in awakening really is a shift within that space you're talking about, within consciousness. And if you have not had that, I would work at that, or really sort of orient toward that. I have playlists, awakening approaches, and so forth. Because then there is a significant alteration in the way you experience yourself, and the way you experience yourself initially is through thoughts. And when you experience yourself, not through thoughts, but more as an experience of being, or a sort of universal consciousness, then it's a lot easier to get the more subtle work done. And the subtle work is actually in the senses, but the mind won't like that at first. So that's why without that first awakening, it's very difficult to do that deepening within the sense fields. And by the sense fields, I mean what appears to be your world, the external world and your physical body and all of that. I mean, I could just tell you that's all an illusion, but that doesn't help you if the illusion is still completely intact. And that illusion will remain intact as long as there's a lot of polarized thought within consciousness. So that's why I kind of recommend doing things in a certain order, generally speaking. Yeah. Good question. Okay, I think that's it for the day. Thanks all for your questions, your views, and your support. Appreciate it.